Hello teacher and hello classmates, my name is Aileen Flores and my classmate Kevin Jose Ramirez and I are going to be developing two very important topics, which are participant observation as a data collection method and phenomenology. Before defining what participant observation is, we must clarify that participant observation has been used in a variety of disciplines as a tool for collecting data about people, processes, cultures in a qualitative research. Now I am going to give you 5 definitions from research teams and individual researchers about participant observation. Some examples are given throughout the definitions as well of how they have applied it to their research projects. So the first definition we've got is from Marshall and Rossman, 1989. These researchers define observation as a systematic description of events, behavior, and artifacts of the setting that has been chosen to study. Also, they say that observations are the ones that enable researchers to describe the setting with the 5 senses, providing a written photograph of the situation or the setting that is being studied. The second definition we have is from DeMonk and Sobo, 1998, in which these researchers define participant observation as the primary method used by anthropologists doing fieldwork. They as well state that fieldwork involves various activities such as active looking, improving memory, informal interviewing, writing detailed field notes, and perhaps the most important one is patience. Definition number 3 is from DeWalt and DeWalt, 2002. They describe participant observation as the process enabling researchers to learn about the activities of the people under study in the natural setting through observing and participating in those activities. Definition number 4 is from Bernard, 1994, whom defines participant observation as the process of establishing rapports within a community and learning how to act like it as a way to blend into the community, and the members will act naturally. Then removing oneself from the community or setting to immerse oneself to the data to understand what is going on and write about it. Fifth and last definition we have is from Fine, 2003, whom uses the term peopled ethnography to describe text that provides an understanding of the setting and describes theoretical implications through the use of vignettes based on field notes from observations, interviews, and products of the group members. Fine gives us a brief description of how one is expected to become part of the group that is being studied, to the extent that the members themselves include the observer into the activities, and they turn to the observer for information about how the group is operating. Fine also indicates that it is at this point when the members of the group begin asking questions to the observer, and when they begin to include the observer in the gossip, that is the time to leave the field. This process he describes of becoming part of the community while observing behaviors and activities is called participant observation. Participant observation is considered a staple in anthropological studies, especially in ethnographic studies, and has been used as a data collection method for over a century. And one of its first instances in use involved the work of Frank Hamilton Cushing, who spent 4.5 years as a participant observer in the Zuni Pueblo people in 1879 in a study for the Smithsonian Institution's Bureau of Ethnology. During this time, Cushing learned the language, participated in the costumes, was adopted by a pueblo, and was even initiated into the priesthood. But because he did not publish extensively about this culture, he was criticized as having gone native, meaning that he had lost his objectivity and therefore his ability to write analytically about this culture. However, it is possible to say that Cushing held the Zuni Pueblo in such high esteem that he felt impolitic or irreverent to publish the information he had gathered from the Zuni Pueblo while being a participant observer. Now I will be answering the following question that says, why use observation to collect data? DeWalt and DeWalt, 2002, believe that the goal for design of research using participant observation as a method is to develop a holistic understanding about the phenomena under study that is as objective and as accurate as possible given the limitations of the method. In other words, they suggest that participant observation be used as a way to increase the validity of the study, as observations help the researchers to better understand the phenomena under study. Schenzel, and Lecomte, 1998, list the following reasons for using participant observation in research: to identify and guide relationships with the informants, to help the researcher get the feel of how things are organized and prioritized, to show the researcher what the cultural members see important in manners, leadership, politics, social interactions, and taboos, to help the researcher become known to the cultural members, thereby making the research process easy. And last, to provide the researcher with a set of questions to be addressed with participants. I will now be talking about the advantages and disadvantages of participant observation. DeMonk and Sobo provide several advantages of using participant observation over other methods of data collection. These include that it affords access to the backstage culture and that it also allows richly detailed descriptions about behaviors, intentions, situations, among others, and that it also provides opportunities for viewing and participating in unscheduled events. On the other hand, we have Johnson and Sackett, 1998, whom describe participant observation as the source of erroneous description in behavioral research. For example, they report that more data has been collected from political, religious activities than about eating, sleeping activities, because political, religious activities seem more interesting to the researchers than eating, sleeping activities. However, the time spent on political, religious activities is less than 3%, and the time spent on the eating, sleeping activities was greater than 60%, meaning that such activities cannot give a precise description of the cultural activities. I will now talk about the limitations of observation. Several researchers have noted that male and female researchers have access to different information, as they have access to different people, different settings, and different bodies of knowledge. Participant observation is collected by a biased human who serves as an instrument to collect data. The researcher must understand how his or her gender, sexuality, ethnicity, class, and theoretical approach may affect observation, analysis, and interpretation. In the majority of cases, using participant observation as a data collection method depends a lot on one's gender, because gender can limit what we can ask, what we can observe, and what we can report. Some of the reasons that are given for a researcher to be excluded from a community for observation is because the community does not trust the observer, or that the community does not feel comfortable of having an outsider in their community. Some of the ways in which observers can be excluded from a community is when the community does not talk a language that the observer can understand, when the community as well changes the topic of what they are talking about when the observer arrives, and when the members of the community do not want to answer to the questions that the observer is asking. I will now talk about the stances of the observer. The degree to which the researcher involves him or herself into the culture or community that is under study makes a big difference in the quality and the amount of data that he or she is going to collect. Goals relates 4 observation stances as follows. The first stance is the complete participant, who is a member of the group being studied and who conceals his or her researcher role to avoid disrupting normality into the activities of the community. Stance number 2 is participant as observer, which means that the participant observer is part of the community being studied and that the community is aware of the research activity. Stance number 3 is observer as participant, which enables the researcher to participate in the group activities as desired, yet the main role of the researcher is to collect data, and the group being studied is aware of the researcher's observation activities. Stance number 4 is the opposite of complete participant. It is the complete observer, in which the researcher is completely hidden from view, or when the researcher is observing in a public area or in a public setting, and the community that is being observed is unaware that they are being observed. Out of these 4 stances, the one that provides the most ethical approach to observation is the observer as a participant, because the observer can participate in the activities and observe, but the most important thing that he's doing is collecting data, and it is optional for him to be participating and to not be participating, rather than just focusing on the activities that he's observing. I will now be answering to the following question that says, how does one know what to observe? Merriam 1999 suggests that the factor in determining what a researcher should observe is the researcher's purpose for conducting the study in the first place. We also have DeWalt and DeWalt 2002 that says that to help a researcher know what to observe, the researcher should study what is happening and why, to sort out the regular and the irregular activities, to look out for the different variations of activities being held, to take out the negative cases and the exceptions, and last but not least, observe when the behaviors are taking as theoretical purposes for the observation. Last, we have Walcott 2001, who suggests that field workers ask themselves if they are making good use of the opportunity to learn what they want to know, and he further on advises them to ask themselves again if what they want to learn is actually making good use of the opportunity that was presented to them. I will now be answering to the following question that says, how does one conduct an observation? White 1979 notes that while there is no best way on conducting research using participant observation, the most effective work is done by researchers who view the informants as collaborators, and if done otherwise, he mentions that it's just a waste of human resources. It is important to mention that conducting observations includes a variety of activities and considerations for a researcher, which involves ethics, establishing reports, selecting key informants, the processes for conducting observations, deciding what and when to observe, keeping field notes, and writing up one's findings. I will now mention the importance of ethics when conducting an observation. A primary consideration in research study is to conduct the research in an ethical manner, letting the community know that one's purpose for observing is to document their activities. DeWalt, and Wayland in 1998 advised the researcher to take some of the field notes publicly to reinforce that what the researcher is doing is collecting data for research purposes. And another ethical responsibility is to preserve anonymity of the participants in the final write-up and in the field notes to prevent their identification if the field notes be revised for inspection.
Gaining entry and establishing report. Okay, in this process, the researcher may look for the sites in which he will get access or easy access to the data. Based on that data, we know that the researcher will answer the research question. To assist in gaining permission from the community to conduct this study, the researcher may bring some letters of introduction or some information that will easy entry, such as information about one's affiliation, funding sources, and planned length of time in the field. Also, one may need to meet with the community leader. Also, we have the process of handing out, in which the researcher gains trust and establishes rapport with the participants. And how is it gotten? Okay, through listening, through different meaning, and conversing with people to develop relationships over an extended period of time. Rapport is built over time, okay? It involves establishing a trusting relationship with the community, so the cultural members will feel secured in order to share their information with the researcher to the extent that they feel assured that the information gathered and reported will be presented accurately and dependably. Rapport building involves active listening, showing respect and empathy, being trustful, and showing a commitment to the well-being of the community or individual. Okay, and finally, confidentiality is also part of the reciprocal trust established with the community under study. The processes of conducting observation. Okay, exactly how does one go about conducting observation? Well, there are three types. The first is descriptive observation, in which one observes anything and everything, assuming that he or she knows nothing. The disadvantage of that type of observation is that the researcher will collect a lot of unnecessary information. Okay, the second type is focused observation. Emphasizes observation supported by interviews, in which the participant insights guide the researcher's decision about what to observe. And the third type of observation is selective observation, in which the researcher focuses on different types of activities to help delineate the differences. Tips for collecting truthful observation data. Be unobtrusive in dress and actions. Become familiar with the setting before beginning to collect data. Keep the observation short and first to keep for becoming overwhelming. Also, be honest but not too technical or detailed in explaining to the participants what he or she is doing. Look for keywords in conversation to trigger later collection of the conversation content. Concentrate on the first and last remarks of a conversation, as these are most easily remembered. During breaks in the action, mentally replay the remarks and scenes one has observed. Actively observe, attending to details one wants to record later. Keep a running observation record. And finally, to move around gracefully within the culture, one should review constantly what he or she is looking for and whether he or she is seeing it or is likely to do so in the circumstances for observation presented. Keeping and analyzing field notes and writing up the findings. When mapping out a setting, one must first learn to put aside his or her preconceptions. The process of mapping involves describing the relationship between the sociocultural behavior one observes and the physical environment. The researcher should draw a physical map of the setting using as much detail as possible. Okay, different suggestions. Account of attendees, including such demographics as age, gender, and race. A physical map of the setting and description of the physical surroundings. Third, a portrayal of where participants are positioned over time, and a description of the activities being observed, detailing activities of interest. Field notes are the primary way of capturing the data that is collecting from participant observation. Notes taken to capture this data include records of what is observed, including informal conversations with. It is advocated using two notebooks for keeping field notes, one with questions to be answered and the other one with more personal observations that may not fit the topics covered in the first notebooks. Good field notes. Okay, to have good field notes, you may use exact quotes when possible. Use pseudonyms to protect confidentiality. Describe activities in order in which they occur. Provide descriptions without inferring meaning, including relevant background information to situate the event, and separate one's own thoughts and assumptions from what one actually observes. Summary. Participant observation involves the researcher's involvement in a variety of activities over an extended period of time that enable him or her to observe the cultural members in their daily activities, daily lives, and to participate in their activities in order to facilitate a better understanding of their behaviors and activities. The process of conducting this type of fieldwork involves gaining entry into the community, selecting gatekeepers and key informants, participating in as many different activities as are allowable by the community members, clarifying one's findings through member checks, formal interviews, and informal conversation, and keeping organized, structured field notes to facilitate the development of a narrative that explains various cultural aspects to the reader. An introduction to phenomenological research. The purpose of the phenomenological approach is to illuminate the specific, to identify phenomena through how they are perceived by the actors in a situation. In the human atmosphere, this normally translates into gathering deep information and perceptions through inductive, qualitative methods such as interviews, discussions, and participant observations, and represented it from the perspective of the research participants. Pure phenomenological research seeks essentially to describe rather than explain, and to start from a free perspective from hypotheses and preconceptions. Phenomenological methods are particularly effective at bringing to the fore the experiences and perceptions of individuals from their own perspectives, and therefore at challenging structural or normative assumptions. Methods. Phenomenological and associated approaches can be applied to single cases or to serendipitous or deliberately selected samples. While single case studies are able to identify issues which illustrate the discrepancies or system failures, or to illuminate or draw attention to different situations, positive inferences are less easy to make without a small sample of participants. In multiple participant research, the strength of inference which can be made increases rapidly once factors start to record with more than one participant. In this respect, it is important to distinguish between statistical and qualitative validity. A variety of methods can be used in phenomenologically based research, including interviews, conversation, participant observation, action research, focus meetings, and analysis of personal texts. Analysis. The problem for many researchers with phenomenological research is that it generates a large quantity of interview notes, tape recordings, jarrings, or other records which must be analyzed. Analysis is also messy, as data doesn't tend to fall into neat categories, and there can be many ways of linking between different parts of discussions or observations. Through methods, where the data is fairly disorganized, interview transcripts, unstructured notes, or personal text, the first stage is to read through and get a feel for what is being said. Identify key themes and issues in each text. These points from all the text for small-scale projects or a sample of different ones where there are more than 15 to 20 can be aggregated and organized with the aid of a mind map or set of post-it notes. The resulting list is used as a set of points to interrogate the text and structure and summarize them. Reporting. Phenomenological studies make detailed comments about individual situations which do not lend themselves to direct generalizations, in the same way which is sometimes claimed for survey research. The development of general theories from phenomenological findings needs to be done transparently if it is to have validity. In particular, the reader should be able to work through from the findings to have theories and see how the researcher has arrived to his or her interpretations. This may or may not involve the research appearing in person in the research. Different factors are important at different points of the report. Use 3 sections or chapters to report and discuss the findings. First, a summary of the findings. This will arrange findings according to themes and topics and draw out the key issues being discussed by participants. Second, a discussion sections. This enables the researcher to intrude more into the study by making interpretations and linkage related findings to previous research or commentary, to personal experience or even to common sense opinions, and developing tentative theories. A final section on issues and implications or recommendations in a commissioned report. These sections provide an opportunity to be creative with the ideas developed through the discussion, provided it is made clear what is being done. A suppositional structure to arguments can be useful to indicate that the story is not coming to a firm conclusions. The main issue. The main issue in taking phenomenological research approach or any other qualitative approach in a commercial or organizational setting is that people do not understand what it is, and they expect similar parameters to apply as for quantitative research. Finally, phenomenological approaches are good at surfacing deep issues and making voices heard. This is not always good or great for the clients or founders. On the other hand, many organizations value the insights which a phenomenological approach can bring in terms of cutting through taking for granted assumptions, prompting action, or challenging complacency. And this is all from group number 2. Thank you for your attention.